Welcome to the Black Duck Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Wilkins. I'm excited to have you join me as I speak with a fascinating collection of folks, all of whom have in common that they've made a way for themselves by finding an intersection between thoughtful consideration and the tactile work of getting their hands dirty. This is an examination of intention, capability, and craft. It's where philosophy meets the blue-collar work ethic and where I find real value. Hey folks, welcome back to the podcast. This week I'm joined by Brent Birch. Brent is a local businessman here in Little Rock, Arkansas. He is the author of a really fantastic book called The Grand Prairie that I highly recommend to anybody who's interested in duck hunting in the South, specifically duck hunting in Arkansas. Just kind of a wealth of knowledge about the history and culture of hunting for, the last 120 years or so of duck hunting here in Arkansas. And he's also the editor of Greenhead Magazine, which is a magazine that comes out of Little Rock, Arkansas, I think once a year, but it's a waterfowl-centered magazine that he's the editor of as well. This week is going to start kind of a 2-week sort of a deep dive into ducks, as it were, probably the most duck-centric and waterfowl-centric podcast that I've done thus far. I do want to give a little bit of a precursor to that, and I was kind of talking to Brent about this after we recorded the podcast, but there's really not I don't think there's a truthful way to talk about waterfowling and to talk about waterfowling in Arkansas without giving some strong opinions. And Brent has some opinions. I've got opinions. You'll hear me talk about that in this episode and also in the episode that'll come out next week. And I just want to acknowledge that, everybody might not agree with me or agree with Brent or agree with whoever I have on the podcast about those waterfowling opinions, and I'm all right with that. I don't want to be at odds with other hunters, but I do have opinions about best practices and the way things should be done. And I think that we all do. And I think it's disingenuous to pretend that that's not the case. So while I will always lean towards kind of the caveat that if it's legal and you want to participate in those sorts of enterprises, then you're not doing anything wrong by the letter of the law, and I'm fine with that, and I'm happy to let people live as they want to. But I do have opinions about kind of best practices, and I think that this conversation is going to talk about maybe some ways that we can look forward a little bit and maybe make some adjustments to the way that we're hunting. It's given me a lot of food for thought. And I think that's important. I think that's a really important way to live your life. And I think specifically that's an important way to approach hunting, kind of that Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of go ahead and get that out of the way. And also invite folks, if you have opinions that you want to share with me, I'm happy to have a back and forth with you as long as we keep it, respectful. So feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or, through email there at the website, and we can talk about some of this stuff. But anyway, this is going to be a very waterfowl-centric podcast, like I said, with Brent Birch, and I hope so much that you'll enjoy it. Stay tuned. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Right now I'm sitting in downtown Little Rock at the Little Rock Technology Park, kind of right here in the heart of downtown Little Rock. And I'm joined this week by Brent Birch, the executive director of the Little Rock Technology Park. What did you say? What are you, the editor, the chief editor over at Greenhead Magazine?
That's right.
And author of the book, The Grand Prairie.
That's it.
It's kind of one of the seminal books in modernity about Arkansas duck hunting and waterfowling culture. And I guess Brent and I have talked a little bit back and forth on social media and the internet for, I don't know, maybe a year. Yeah, maybe a year or two. And so excited to finally be able to meet you and sit down and talk with you for a bit, buddy.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So as usually happens, before we record these podcasts, we've been sitting here for probably an hour just talking about stuff, and probably a podcast's worth of information has already been disseminated. But, this podcast is largely about hunting. Well, maybe that's not true. This podcast is in the hunting realm, definitely, but it's really kind of designed to be an examination of craft, an examination of people who have made a way for themselves and kind of put their own particular spin on things. And since I am so firmly rooted in, waterfowling, and specifically waterfowling here in Arkansas, which at one time just meant ducks, and now I think folks understand that's kind of been expanded to a lot of people starting to pursue speckled-bellied geese, which I've spent the last few years really spending a lot of time going after. Brent is a great person to talk to about that. So I'd kind of like to just start this discussion off with a question I don't really ask that much of the people on this podcast, but like, how did you get started duck hunting? Like, what I kind of gather that it was like a sort of traditional father to son type thing, but yeah. So how did that start for you?
Yeah, it definitely was. Started tagging along with my dad at 5-6 years old. He didn't really grow up duck hunting either. He's from Fort Smith, and his dad hunted in the Arkansas River bottoms up there, but he didn't get to go a lot. It's pretty kind of dangerous hunting. So he didn't really start hunting until he went to work for a bank here in North Little Rock that had a corporate club. This was a bank owned by the Franklin family, who some people follow Arkansas waterfowling history know that they own Wingmeat, which is obviously a historical famous club. But the club they owned prior to that was at Crockett's Bluff, which is near Casco, east of Stuttgart on the White River. Mm-hmm. And that was the Lyons family's club prior to the purchase of Wingmead. So when they switched over and purchased Wingmead, they turned the lodge and everything at Crockett's Bluff into a corporate club for their they owned a couple of different companies. They owned a Coca-Cola bottler, they owned a John Deere tractor dealer, and they owned this bank. And that's where these companies were allowed to take their customers. And so my dad, being in the banking business, would have certain days that they would be allowed to take customers. And so he would be busy entertaining customers, and I ran around with all the guides. And this is when I was, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 years old, somewhere in there. And that's just kind of when I became fascinated with the sport. Not only, the hunting and the killing part of it, but just the culture part of it too. It's a super historic lodge. It's on the National Historic Register, and all that. Super cool hunting the White River bottoms. This is all public ground now. All the ground that they hunted at that time is now all public ground. But that's kind of where I got introduced to it. And then he had a club he was a part of in parallel to that we got to go in much smaller groups. And in the true father-son, I had younger brother that also hunted a lot at the time. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And that's kind of where it all started.
And so if you're hunting like these, what people think of when they think of duck hunting in Arkansas, like flooded hardwood bottoms, were you pretty much mostly shooting greenheads back then?
Yeah, it was. It was, and people that hunt those White River bottoms, they'll know Round Pond. That was where that was the best spot. Of course, there's a bazillion horseshoe lakes in Arkansas, but that was another one. But those were primarily the two key places. These are huge blinds that could hunt, 15, 20 people. Not that we had that many all the time, but they were big blinds.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I got exposed to it and of course it was big groups of mallards. Those White River ducks tend to bunch up. You weren't shooting a lot of singles and pairs. It was 500, 600, 750 ducks in a group back in
Really?
the day.
That big?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And they'd be little tiny specks in the sky, and those guys could get on those. They blew those D2s back before they became so popular. As they are now, but they could make those things holler at those ducks way up there, and you see. And once they start building, and then be more of them, and more of them, more of them, and they hit those big river lakes and those big groups. Pretty cool sight to see, especially as a kid.
Yeah, that's wild. I know for sure I've never seen a group of mallards that big. What's the biggest wad I've ever seen actually work down? If I was going to tell somebody, I'd probably tell them 100. In truth, probably like 75.
Yeah.
Which is I'm stoked about. Heck, I was bragging the other day to somebody that I was hunting with some buddies, and maybe like 3 days before the end of season this year, we were hunting a public hole, and I was like, man, we were getting big groups of birds, man, like 50 at a time, which for the last couple of years, that's been, for me anyway, that's been a lot of birds.
Oh, yeah.
It has been. It's definitely different. So what time period are we talking about here? Like,
This will be early 80s.
Okay, so like just kind of the
When
heyday.
waterfowling wasn't that great. I mean, we had the short seasons. That was when
really?
Yeah, that was when the point system was going on.
Describe that point
that
point system to people, because I think a lot of folks wouldn't know about that.
Yeah, that's it's what's interesting. Not to get away from that, but you hear a lot of people talking about we need to go back to less days and change our limits, because when the 40, 50, 60-year-old crowd was hunting back then, when duck season didn't get so good, they adjusted the season all the time. We go from a 30-day season to a 45-day season to 6 ducks to 5 ducks to 2 ducks. I mean, it was all over the place. Now we've been in this 60-day 6 duck limit for 26 years now, I think, something like that. But the point system, each duck was assigned a point value, and that dictated your limit. And it was also supposed to work in sequential order. So like a mallard hen would be 75 points. I don't remember what the point values were, but I can get in the ballpark. A mallard hen would be worth 75 and a drake would be worth 25, for example. Well, if you killed that hen first, you were at 75 and you could only kill one more mallard. So you could kill a drake and you were done. But if you killed 3 drakes first, the hen could be your last duck. So you go over the 100 points. But if the hen was the last duck you shot, that's okay, because that's what pushed you over. But it took this abacus to keep up with what you were doing, because every duck was assigned some different value. And so, I don't know how many people really followed the order they were shot in.
Yeah, that would be arduous. I'm sure there was a lot of seeing what was there at the end of the day and making that fit.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. But that didn't last too long. I've actually got some graphics on my computer that I found that actually laid out the point system and had this chart and what duck was what point value and all that from, I want to say it was like, I don't know, 82, 83, somewhere in there. But there were, that was not the heyday of duck hunting, but because we had some tough seasons breeding wise, and that's all they went on back then. There wasn't the adaptive harvest management model back then. They were kind of more winging it, and so we bounced around all over the place with how long the seasons were. And you got to think 30-day season goes really quick.
Yeah.
How many days did you actually get of good hunting weather in 30 days? Probably not very many. Where it was cold, the sun was out. I mean, you probably had a lot of days where 75 degrees and cloudy, which are the worst. And so you're already cutting 30 days down to, maybe 2 weeks worth of actual huntable days. That's probably being gratuitous.
Well, and then you've got like when most people can go, right?
That's right.
Like most folks can't plan their lives around hunting every day of duck season.
That's right.
There's lots of people that say they hunt every day of duck season, and they're almost all liars.
That's right.
Yeah.
I
think it would be a close close race between who lies more, like duck hunters or fishermen, right?
Yeah.
But so you start out like that, very much like a lot of people in Arkansas. You're chasing greenheads. You're hunting these like so at that time you're hunting naturally flooded.
That's right.
River bottoms, right?
Yep.
And then, so I guess kind of last 50 years, the heyday of waterfowling in Arkansas would be kind of the 90s, maybe even like the latter half of the 90s, right? There was still public guiding going on public land.
Yep.
This is before I was duck hunting, but I've heard stories about like the first couple years of Mojo's, and that it was just like unreal.
Yeah, that was 99, 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the last time we killed over 1 million mallards in Arkansas too.
Really?
Yeah, the 99, 2000 season, and I think the 2000, 2001 season.
Do you know what we're at now?
Half that.
Yeah.
I want to say.
I was thinking like 450 is the last thing I heard.
keep all these stats. I have a spreadsheet that keeps a ridiculous amount of knowledge that probably isn't interesting to a lot of people but me. But I've kept up with how many season days and what limits were, dating all the way back in time. But I get out of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife report where they somehow extrapolate how many ducks we kill.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they do that. They've got some mathematic model because nobody's going around counting every dead duck.
Sure.
But we still lead the country in mallards harvested, but it's a huge reduction from those days. Now that was the benefit of some really wet years breeding wise. So breeding was cranking along pretty good, and then of course that spinning wing decoy deal just made anybody could turn that thing on could kill a duck.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. There was no skill to that, and that's another segue into what goes on in Canada, even at a small volume because of how many people hunt, how many ducks and how many acres there are to spread out. But it's kind of interesting. You see those videos of guys hunting in Canada and they're blowing duck calls, and I don't know why they're blowing their duck call. They don't need it. I've done it. I've been to Saskatchewan. You can leave your duck call at home.
Yeah, well, and I'm repeating information that I've heard, but I believe it's accurate. Is that so? We're talking about spinning wing decoys or like Mojo's. You'll hear a lot commonly referred to as Mojo's, which is a brand. But it's basically like a duck decoy with these motorized wings. Kind of looks like like a pinwheel from when you were a kid. Yeah, just basically like that, but they have a motor on them. Stuff like that has existed for a long time, just that was wind driven. But when they put a motor on it, especially from a distance, it really emulates that kind of fluttering, flapping of a mallard's wings. And until ducks got really conditioned to it and used to it, it was just kind of like an on button. It was this visual cue they could key in on from a long ways away and bring them in. But anyway, I've also heard that those motorized decoys work exponentially better on first-year birds too.
Oh, for sure.
So then especially if you're talking about having that activity happening at the top of the flyway, your juvenile birds, first-year birds, are getting disproportionately hunted. And then I've actually heard that within those juvenile birds, the preponderance of the birds that are getting killed are actually females. Mm-hmm. Like for some reason it works better on hen, so like first year hens than it does on drakes. And then like anyone who's familiar a little bit with wildlife management understands that taking a breeding age female out of a population, like you have to extrapolate all the babies that female could produce, as opposed to like taking a male out. Doesn't impact the population near as much. So, and then Arkansas being at kind of the bottom of the North American Mississippi flyway, kind of, you'll hear people talking about the bottom of the funnel. That does have, that has effects. If you're taking out a lot of the juvenile birds, which, younger animals are usually kind of easier to fool, right?
Yep.
So then you're getting fewer of those making it down the flyway. You're dealing with more seasoned birds because a mallard can live for, 20 years, 25 years, something like that?
Yep.
So, a bird that's made that trip 15 times gets pretty educated. And I don't know. Maybe that does I would like to think it makes for better hunters in Arkansas, but we were kind of discussing that's definitely not always the case.
Right. No, that's true. And what's interesting too is a lot of the science community doesn't believe that hunters are impacting, hunter mortality isn't impacting the population at all. It's basically a non-factor, which logically doesn't make any sense, doesn't to me. And not that I'm trying to poke holes in science, but you would think the more hens you would send back to camp, because the hens have a hard enough time as it is. They
Sure.
get smoked on the nest by predators. They face so many obstacles to surviving year to year that we as hunters, if we're talking about these last couple, this is 4 seasons in a row, that a lot of people would say it's the worst 4 seasons of my life, despite probably not remembering when they were a kid in the 80s and we could kill 2 mallards a day back then, but they complain about there's not enough ducks, but they're not discriminatory in whether they're shooting hens or not, because in Arkansas we can kill 2 hens. You would think they would make some adjustment to that, and what would it hurt? You can't tell me you're going to hurt hunter satisfaction by taking away a hen. People aren't satisfied anyway. Hens aren't making the difference in whether they're satisfied on the hunting season or not.
Yeah, people put hens in the back of the lanyard when they're hanging them for pictures.
No doubt. Now, but in the culture we're in right now, if it ensures that you're going to shoot a limit, people are shooting hens, and that's the hard part about where we are with some of this is in that goal of we got to limit out. We got to limit out so I can put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
That whole deal. This kind of this limit out culture we're in. The hens are definitely getting targeted more, or definitely not laid off in that goal to reach a limit during tough conditions. Because if the conditions were great, we'd all be shooting all greenheads, no doubt about it. But if they're not, but I still got to shoot a limit. So if it comes in and we got hens left, go ahead and get them.
Well, I do wonder too. I had to get to a certain level of skill before I could really effectively pick ducks out.
Yeah, sure. It's even harder in Canada.
Oh yeah, they're not mold. Yeah, they're not
changed. A
plumed
lot
out.
of them haven't changed over, and so a big wad comes in, and you may drop a drake, but you pick it up and it'll look exactly like a hen feather-wise, which that's what you'd be picking out as they came in. So, a lot of them do get taken because there's a lot of times there's no way to tell what you're shooting at, so you're just shooting.
There's so many layers to all of this stuff. But yeah, so we should probably actually back off before we start lamenting Arkansas duck hunting culture. And you alluded to it when you first started talking about when you began hunting, but you were talking about the culture surrounding duck hunting, and I do think that's something. I've talked to John Stevens, I've talked to Josh Raggio, I've talked to a lot of people that are kind of proponents of the historical culture of American duck hunting, kind of the folk art roots of it, as far as decoy carving and call making, which is something that I'm super super interested in myself. But yeah, what parts of that did you find really attractive, or you found an allure to that kind of helped cement you, as a duck hunter, as part of your personal identification?
Right. Well, as you know, duck hunting is a social sport, so there's that element to it. because there were traditions at that club I referenced earlier, Crockett's Bluff. Pre-hunt there was this tradition. Post-hunt there was. I wasn't old enough to drink them, but I'd see these men, these kind of corporate giants, so to speak. Post-hunt Bloody Mary, and just the dialogue and all the talk, and then these big breakfasts, these big meals, the lodges. That you got to spend a lot of time in, because there's a lot of downtime in duck hunting. And then, of course, the history part. I have vivid memories of these big photo albums. Hunts dating back to the '60s, long before I was born. '60s, '50s, and '60s. Just cool stuff that just kind of felt fascinated by this life, this waterfowling lifestyle, so to speak. And I don't think anybody back then did it as the way we do it now. People have dedicated their whole life. I mean, that's all they do. Back then, that was pretty rare. If you were a guide, you probably did something else. Besides, a lot of them were farmers or in the ag world. But now, people have built personal brands and things around it. Back then, that really wasn't the case. So these guys, they were just duck hunters, and I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah, and you've referenced it a few times. This is just like a question about how you personally look at it. Do you look at it as, do you think more of like a sporting activity, or because sometimes I mean, it doesn't really feel like a sport to me, but that might be because maybe I've got some kind of ingrained prejudices against sports. I don't know. But yeah, what do you think of it as like a lifestyle decision, or a leisure activity, or like kind of, we talked about before, there is this, especially here in the South, it does oftentimes serve as like like a corporate retreat kind of atmosphere in some of these bigger, more well-established clubs. Mm-hmm. So yeah, how do you kind of view it?
I kind of look at it a couple different ways. There's definitely a sport element to me, and by that I mean it's a competition as to whether I can fool that bird on this day.
Okay.
And so I definitely see it that way, and I don't mean that in a bloodthirsty way. It's more like, I mean, you're chasing a wild animal that breeds somewhere else, spends most of his time somewhere else, but ends up here, and you got to figure out how to harvest it. Mm-hmm. And the days that you win, so to speak, is pretty satisfying. There's plenty of days you don't win, and there's plenty of days you kind of tie. You can look at it that way, but there's definitely that element. There's a great amount of satisfaction to the days that you trick them, because they're pretty smart, and you got to have all some conditions line up. You got to do some things right. You can make a bad call, and when to take the shot. You could do a lot of things. One more pass kind of deal, and then you don't get them. Yeah. So there's definitely that element, but there's the lifestyle element of it too. Is pretty intriguing to me. Not only the history part, but even the current day of just the atmosphere and time I can either spend with my kids. My wife even goes a few times a year. Have a lot of really close friends, and I made a lot of friendships through duck hunting too. So all of that kind of adds up as to why I do it, and how I kind of view the sport, if you want to call it the sport of waterfowling, but the activity of it. And it's a getaway too. We don't have there's no phone at our duck club. There's no internet at ours, so you can kind of distance. I mean, you still have a cell phone, of course, and you're reachable, but it is a good way to get away, kind of outside the big city, so to speak. So there's an element too. There's just a lot of factors to it for me, and it definitely goes way beyond the killing part. I very rarely post pictures online anymore of pile pics.
Yeah.
Anybody can post those things. Now, if it's a unique experience, or I've hunted with somebody unique, or something unique happened on the hunt, yeah, I'll do that. But the daily pile pic, I think that's kind of tired, and kind of stale to me, because you can go through Instagram and you can scroll through bunches of them, and it's the same picture. It's a bunch of dudes standing over a bunch of dead ducks, and
Yeah.
I've kind of moved past that, so to speak. For me, that's some people. If you're in the guide business, something like that. You got to show that you can produce. I get all that. I'm not hating on it. To me, I've just moved past that. I would say I'm not as angry as I used to be.
Yeah, I actually think that's worth addressing, and I'll be the one to go out on a limb here and make some more definitive statements about like the pile pick culture. So that's something that, like, a lot of people that would listen to this might follow me on Instagram, and that's something you pretty much don't ever see on my social media accounts. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is because, if you're really following the letter of the law, a lot of those pile picks are not legal. You're supposed to have your birds. If you're in a picture if a single person's in a picture with 5 limits of birds, an argument could be made that they are over a possession limit, right? So that's just, as far as playing by the letter of the law, I like to try and do stuff as right as possible. Also, there is, and I've kind of thought about this and talked to some people about this. We view birds, and as humans, we view birds and fish very differently than we view mammals, right? So I think that most people kind of have an ingrained ethical sense about how you're supposed to treat animals that have eyelashes, right? And I think a lot now, even though there is still in the South, there's like a culture of like doing deer drives, and you might see pictures occasionally of like more than one deer, like on a tailgate. I think that a lot of people would find, if you took deer and you displayed them the way people display ducks, they would find that kind of distasteful or off-putting or something wrong with it, right? And I'm not trying to get too precious with any of this, but I do like to try and just evoke a sense of respect, because to spend as much time pursuing ducks and geese as I do, to spend as much time learning about them as I do, and it's kind of weird to talk about having love for something that ultimately you're like facilitating its demise, but I really do feel like I have a tremendous amount of respect and love for these animals. And so I do want to present that to the public in a way that's demonstrable of that. And so that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that some of this pile pick / limits with a Z culture is just a little icky. And I don't know that it actually does us any good as hunters and as part of the hunting community as we become more and more of a minority in the larger society, right? So that's my little soapbox speech about it. That was me saying that, not Brent Birch. But yeah, I'm also going to go out on a limb here and say this. I would like people to stop taking pictures of ducks with like holding ducks in their mouth with their beaks in their mouth. It's
right.
I'm just not into it. And like, I know some people that I think are good people that have done that before, but I think that's just like distasteful, and yeah, I don't think there's a reason for it, If I do post pictures of ducks, I like to post pictures of ducks that like aren't all shot up, that still, because you're talking about something that's as pretty as an animal can get.
No doubt.
And that's like one of my favorite things is, to hold a greenhead and look at the iridescence and look at the speculum feathers and stuff. So I just try and present it like best foot forward most of the time. And then, yeah, I could wax poetic about my whole ethos and whole bird usage and all that stuff. But, yeah, I think that's worth keeping in mind, whenever possible, and to some degree, just some mindfulness involved in that. But, man, so I've kind of segued into that, and we were talking about it a little bit before, but so you've grown up with this love of this like old timey waterfowling culture here in the South, so I'm thinking and imagining like the smell of tobacco and bourbon and like, wood grain stuff and leather and just all these kind of evocative American images, right? So, and like we talked about before too, like we all kind of have our own ideas about the right way to do things. So if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear maybe just some of your ideas about best case waterfowling. Like what's some of the stuff that you think might be getting lost a little bit or overlooked with this, with, like social media kind of showboat culture that you'd like, if you could wave a magic wand, that you would get people back to?
Right. Well, we can start. I think this is a very good case in point, and you chase specklebellies. I chase specklebellies. Have for a while. I'm not a nouveau guy to it. I've been doing it 10 years or so. We've gotten, I think, and some people probably will be very much in disagreement or angry about what I'm about to say, but I think what has happened regarding specklebellies, because Arkansas, there's no question, specklebelly capital of the world. We are the winter home for a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And they're awesome, unbelievable to hunt. Great table fare. Everybody knows that. And field hunting in Arkansas has gotten tough, and that the specklebelly has allowed people that don't have access to woods something to shoot at. Now, a lot of it, unfortunately, is pass shooting, going over their duck decoys, because they haven't learned how to hunt them yet. There's not a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there hunting geese, but there are a lot of outfitters, and I know you do some of that too, specifically chasing specklebellies. But we've gotten now all of a sudden we're wintering all of these birds, and there's a lot of habitat for them in Arkansas. Where our duck habitat's probably taken a step back. You don't have as many farmers flooding fields. Well, guess what? Geese don't require flooded fields. They'll go sit in a dry field and peck away at food all day long. Yeah. So the outfitters have come out of the woodwork, and it's a 15, 20 gun hunt kind of deal. How anybody knows what they shot, I don't know. I've gone on them. I've done it. Most of the time I don't shoot. I just watch because I got invited, or it was something I needed to be able to take a big group of people. And it's conducive to that, and it's helped supplement some struggling duck hunting, like I was saying. But these kind of spray and pray hunts, they're going to be, in the long run, they're going to be tough on the resource. And there's already some telemetry data and some science backing that. I don't know if you saw the recent Ducks Unlimited article. Mm-mm. Well, the cover of that magazine is a specklebelly, and it says something about chasing specks is the article. And it goes into, how the popularity of how specklebelly has become such a popular bird to hunt. And, of course, Arkansas was the number one destination. But in the top 5 all the destinations were what you'd expect: California, Kansas, Texas, which a lot of these birds used to be in Texas that we get. But the interesting one on there was Indiana. Well, so everybody's like, why the hell? How the hell the specklebelly is going to Indiana? And I know this to also be true in North Missouri, because I have a close friend that lives here that they grew up there, and they never saw specklebellies ever until a couple years ago. Well, the telemetry data is showing some of those birds that are going to Indiana were in Arkansas until the shooting started. Yeah. And so when the shooting started, they went and found habitat, which, everywhere there's acres and acres of dry fields, grain fields. Geese don't require, they can go roost on some lake, and they'll go sit in those dry fields and eat, which there's bazillion acres all the way up Canada and beyond. So the hunting pressure that we're starting to put on these birds, it's gonna impact before the DIYer ever gets a chance to do it and figures out, man, I really don't know how to hunt specklebellies. Those birds are gonna, if we continue on the route we're on, and we keep producing, these 15, 20 gun hunts, we're gonna run that resource off. And so that's a pretty big one for me. Now that doesn't impact a lot of people because a lot of people don't speckle belly hunt unless they're paying somebody for an afternoon hunt to fill some time in. That's
Sure.
pretty common. Or they need to take a bunch of people because you can take a bunch of people and hide them and all of this. But I think if we don't get a grip on some of that, especially if we go back to 72 days and 3 geese, we've been on 88 days and 2 geese for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that's when all these outfitters came out of the woodwork because 88 days, and if I can get $200 a gun over 88 days, it's pretty good. Well, now I would suspect when we go back to 72 days and 3 geese, they just raise the rates, still make a good amount of money, but now we're clipping an extra goose and we're shooting into extra big groups of geese because they're hunting however many thousand decoys they're putting out.
Yeah,
so they're hunting big groups of geese.
Spreads have gotten bigger for sure.
The spreads are huge, and so they're attracting bigger wads of geese. You can call it educating geese, whatever you want to call it, but I guess that's the point I'm making. We can't continue to shoot into those big, huge groups of geese and think that they're going to stay in Arkansas.
Yeah,
they'll go find somewhere else that people aren't putting near the pressure on them. And if that article saying that they're showing up in Indiana now isn't a red alert, I don't know what is. So that's a tough one. That's one going on right now. And a lot of it, unfortunately, and this is probably the controversial thing I'll say about it. A lot of it is. It's a lot of take and not much give. By that meaning, I don't know how many of them are putting back into the resource or into the habitat. It's more of I'm going to rent this field for the day. I've seen geese on it. I'm going to go knock on a door. I'm going to hunt this field. I'm going to shoot it until the geese aren't used anymore, and then I'm going to go on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And whether that is they're doing anything that is beneficial to the resource or not, that's really hard to tell. And if I'm wrong, I'd be open ears to hear what the give back is for a lot of these guys because I'm just not seeing it.
So, you're actually giving me quite a bit of food for thought. So yeah, I'd say that the first speckle belly hunt I went on was like a 10 gun kind of layout hunt, right? And I've done that. Last year, we kind of started to move away from that and started doing some A-frame hunting, which it's a different kind of hunting too, So it was moved away from hunting feeds as much, started trafficking birds a little bit more, smaller decoy spreads, a lot more calling involved, right? And I like it better. I figured out that I liked having smaller groups of hunters. So like we were talking about, like I've started doing it last year, and this year I'm going to continue it where I cap all my hunts at 5 people. And yeah, if we get back to kind of the ickiness factor, and look, a lot of this stuff with hunting is, for better or for worse, it's a learning process, right? So you might learn to do something in one way because a lot of hunting is emulating the first way you were shown it, right? And then you develop your own ethos and ethics around it and decide what works best for you and just kind of how you want to conduct yourself in the world and move through it. And yeah, I've talked to a lot of outfitters. I'm not really like an outfitter, right? Like I run a half dozen weekend hunts a year.
Right.
But I deal with a lot of outfitters, and yeah, there's a freneticism to it, right? It's the chasing the birds. I don't hear as much about like giving birds a break, and I have seen it. I've seen it change in the last 3 years with speckle bellies. 3 years ago, there still weren't a ton of people pursuing them.
That's
right. But every year that the duck hunting got tougher, and more people started saying like, I'm leasing these rice fields, and I'm not really seeing a lot of ducks there, but I'm seeing lots of specks fly overhead. And so I started seeing folks that were like, I'm going to get a dozen speck decoys start blowing a call very badly.
Yeah.
And, like you said, trying to pass shoot them. And so, especially in Arkansas, a place where there's a lot of economy involved in waterfowl, I do wonder how we balance it, because someone might hear what you're saying, some outfitter, just anywhere in East Arkansas would say, man, this is how I'm feeding my family. I'm out here trying to make a living.
Yeah.
You're corporate rich guy hunting or whatever, and I've got to stay on birds, right? So what would, and you might not have an answer for this, and but I'd be interested, and this would be a good segue too into talking about how some of that private land does facilitate like giving back to the resource as far as ducks. What do you think could be done specifically for speckled bellies to facilitate that, like to give back more to the resource?
Yeah, and to clarify, I'm all for somebody making a buck. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just we talked about waterfowling, and I mean if you put what you just said in an internet forum, I'm just playing devil's advocate because that's immediately what.
No doubt.
The keyboard warriors.
No question, no question. And I'm all for it. I mean, guides and outfitters have been around forever. Mm-hmm. I think there's a right way to do it, and I think you could. It's probably the best way they could get back the resource because they don't necessarily have the. It may not have the means. They may not have the access to the land, and not that. Goose hunting ground requires a lot of work, not like ducks do, not anywhere close. You'll see those things sitting in the most random fields, and it doesn't make sense as to why. Where you see ducks sitting in certain places, and you go, well, that's because, X. It's more of controlling what you control as far as an outfitter goes, because the people that are showing up, they're just showing up to shoot. I get that.
Yeah.
They're not invested in the long-term health of the speckled belly population. And there may be a lot of people that way the same on the duck side. You just don't see the volume of hunters on one hunt. So probably the optimal thing they could do, just kind of off the top of my head, is take those same 15 guns, but maybe break up your groups. I mean, there's so much ground to hunt, and I understand you're going to have your A feed and your B feed and your C feed that you're trying to get the geese come off of or come to, and but if you're sticking around out there for 15, 20 gun limits, and a lot of them will say, well, we kill them in the first 30 minutes anyway, which with a 2 goose limit, that's probably true. If you work a couple of big groups and
it's doable.
You got some killers in there, you can do it. But if you were able to maybe spread those groups out, everybody knows what they shot. First of all, it's a better client experience, I would think. You can get in and out of there quicker. You're not throwing up, you're not going to the plug on every group, trying to get that 30-minute hunt in. Mm-hmm. To alleviate some of this pressure we're putting on these birds, because you think about, we hunt them pretty much from the day they get here.
Yeah, it's like Halloween to the last day of January.
Yeah, and we hunt them pretty much straight through, and that's not sustainable. It's just not. And everybody will say, well, I drive down the highway and all I see are fields just loaded with those things. And but there's some science out there that is a little hazy on where their population is. Despite what we see with our eyeballs, it's kind of the inverse of what ducks. The science kind of says the duck population's okay. It's fine. We don't need to reduce season. We don't need to reduce limits. But with our eyeballs, we're not seeing them like we think we should.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of working the opposite with the speckled bellies. I'm seeing thousands of those things in a field here, and then I'll drive another mile down the road. There's another couple thousand in that field. But there were some numbers off. Now, of course, they didn't get to do the breeding ground surveys, but there was a pretty good gap in what they thought were going to be heading south and what they counted in the midwinter surveys. So, where are those missing geese? kind of thing. And so there's some buzz, a little bit of buzz in the science community about that. And I'm talking, in the range of 400,000 geese. Counts were differed in that much. And then you think about it, that's a lot of birds. So where are those geese? Were the counts not right? Were they somewhere we weren't flying over? I don't know. But like I said, there's a little bit of buzz in that. And are they not reproducing as fast as we thought they do? Do they not reproduce every year? Is it maybe every 2-3 year cycle? Because the more speckled bellies have become popular in hunting, there's more science being invested in understanding more about them. We've been really tracking ducks for a long time, science-wise. So that's a little concerning. Are we outpacing by these big party hunts and killing 2,000 birds and 3,000 birds a season? You do that, multiply that over every outfitter. Are we harvesting them faster than they can reproduce? I don't know. The word was there weren't going to be a lot of young geese in this fall flight, and I saw tons of young birds.
Did you?
Yes, and a lot were harvested early on too in that early split. In the early season.
I didn't start seeing young birds until probably the second half of the season.
Yeah, we saw a bunch because it was noticeable because you were expecting to go out there and see a bunch of mature birds because of what we've been told that they had kind of a tough year breeding wise, but I didn't see that. Saw a lot of young birds, but that missing 400,000 geese is a little concerning if that's accurate.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of food for thought.
Really, it's getting back to that. What an outfitter can do, like I said, can't control that, but it is that control the controllables thing. If we can somehow, you can make the same amount of money, but back that pressure down. We need to start looking at it that way. Maybe the 15, 20 gun hunts become 5 gun hunts spread out over 3 different fields, because I know they all got access to a bunch of ground if they're worth their salt. Now there's a bunch that have come up that don't have access to a bunch. They maybe have a little family farm, and that's where everybody's got to run through there, and that's not going to be sustainable for them. If they try to do that every day, they'll shoot the geese off their farm. But these ones that have access to big expansive acres, they can split up and quit trying to do the hero 15, 20 gun hunt limits by 7:30 or whatever it is, and start looking at, I'll take these 5 or 6 guns to this farm. You take 5 or 6 guns to this farm, and I'll take 5 or 6 to this other farm, and we'll still all be done the same amount of geese, but we got in and out of there faster. We didn't shoot into as many big wads, and still killed the same amount of geese, and we still had the same number of clients.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, I don't know that people will do that unless they're made.
I know. Oh, no, I agree. I do. I totally get that. But I mean, there are ways that we can do this better, I think, to sustain it longer. You just, I mean, if you think the geese, I'm sure people once upon a time never thought the geese would leave Louisiana.
Oh no,
they
didn't.
Gone.
Yeah,
they are gone.
I mean, I've got a good friend that I hunt with a lot, and he's from Baton Rouge, and he left Baton Rouge 4 years ago and moved up here to East Arkansas purely because of speckled bellies.
Yeah.
So he could guide speckled bellies. He was driving a dump truck the rest of the year, and then he would guide speckled bellies all year long. I mean, he's like giving his life over to it.
And you can't blame it all on habitat. I know Louisiana's gone through some habitat issues, and so is South Texas. I get that. They don't farm as much rice they used to, and the rice they did, and now it's crawfish ponds. I know all of that, up to speed on all of that. But you can't say it's all habitat.
Really, you think it has a lot to do with hunting pressure?
It's got to be a factor. And maybe it is and it's probably I don't think maybe it's a byproduct of probably us, Arkansas, not putting as much rice ground and other ag into a duck-friendly habitat, and have left it dry or it's sheet water, and the geese found it. So why do I got to go all the way to Louisiana? I can just stop here, and it just kept building and building. So I mean, there's lots of factors. It's not all pressure driven, but it's got to be some. But but my point being is if you don't think that they will shift somewhere else for some reason, you'd be naive. And if it's, for us, it's not going to be habitat, then it's going to be pressure.
Yeah, well, I mean, waterfowl by their very nature are ephemeral, right? It's one of the things that people like about them.
Yeah.
But, as human beings, we want things to stay the same. And they very rarely do, and especially with waterfowl, right? I mean, yeah, people probably for the last 5 or 10 years in Arkansas have been lamenting duck hunting culture here, talking about like the hunts haven't been as good. There's too many people hunting. There's too many people from out of state hunting. There's not as many birds. Private grounds holding all the birds. Some of this is just. I actually think that a lot of people wouldn't duck hunt if they couldn't complain about stuff, because I think that's part of what they like. But yeah, I mean, yeah, what you're really speaking to the idea that to be good ethical stewards of this resource, that we've got to really maintain a lot of flexibility. So here's a question I'd ask you that someone has asked me this before, but you've got so much invested, so much of your identity and your time and your thought processes, right? You've got spreadsheets and all this on your on your computer. If someone could wave a magic wand and they said to you, you can't ever shoot another duck again. You can't ever shoot another goose again. But for every 10 years that you don't do that, that'll guarantee 10 years of good, healthy populations and good quality duck hunting in Arkansas. Would you make that deal with the devil?
No, probably not. Because I think the hunter plays a big role in that. It's been pronounced more than once that hunters make the best conservationists, kind of deal. So
no. I just mean you, Brent Birch, can't do it. Everybody else can hunt.
Oh,
you just
me?
Can't. Yeah.
No, probably not.
Okay,
probably not.
Good. That's a good, honest answer.
Yeah, it's definitely part of, however you want to say it, part of who I am, kind of deal. Now, if the limit dropped to 2 ducks, would I still do it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If the season went to 30 days, would I still do it? Yeah. Now, part of I did it when I was a kid. I don't have the same investment in it, and I'm not talking about money. I don't have the same emotional and physical investment in it as I did as a kid. As a kid, I just kind of went.
Yeah.
Now, I spend a significant part of the off season duck farming. I don't farm the farm we hunt, but I definitely invest the sweat and hours strategizing how to do it and do it better. Trying to farm for ducks.
The ag that you have there is it any of it traditional ag, or is it all for waterfowl?
It's this particular farm is definitely skewed towards waterfowl.
Okay.
It's not like your typical farm you would see on the prairie. There's it's small. It's about 240 acres, but I think there's about 12 acres that's kind of a zero grade.
Mm-hmm.
The previous owner had done it. It's got a little bit of, it's not a true zero grade, but it's as close as you're going to get. Everything else, it's pretty rough farm ground with two moist soil units that are in within the framework of the farm. But it is definitely a duck focused effort there, because to me, modern day waterfowling, you almost have to. If you were I got to make as much money off this farm operation, it's probably not going to, in today's world, it's probably not going to be that great for the ducks.
Yeah,
because you're going to zero grade it. Well, mallards aren't loving the zero grade. You'll have speckle bellies. You'll have a bunch of teal, spoonbills,
mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But being able to track mallards, it's just got to be a little more raw than modern modern farming practices allow. So yeah, no efficient farmer is going to want anything to do with our place.
Do you see any benefit to other species doing that?
What do you mean?
I mean, do you see like benefit to? And maybe I'm misunderstanding, but like quail hunting in Arkansas has been like tremendously affected by a change in agricultural practices, right? Like field rows, or just ag going from edge of the field to the edge of the field. There's not those brush lines or anything like that. So if you've got, if you have kind of like more undulation in the land, and I'd imagine are you dealing with all crop, or do you still have like coffee bean and all that stuff mixed in? So do you see any benefit to other wildlife, or are you paying attention to that?
I mean, definitely and you would see this place and you would not think a deer ever wanted to cross it. See quite a few deer and got some pretty good deer on camera, not during the daytime.
Sure.
But we're real close to Biomeda, not the wildlife management area, the actual waterway.
Yeah.
Of course we've got beavers, and in fact we just had a trapper this week because they've done some pretty extensive damage to some of our ways to move water. But I've seen coyotes, seen foxes, doves. I mean, it kind of draws all kinds of stuff. I think there is some benefit to it still being in a more native state, probably as close as it could be in modern time. It's the farm it's an old cypress break, which a majority on it is the farm to the south of us, but it was all cleared at one time.
Okay.
So it doesn't look like a cypress break now, but if you see a topo map, you can see where it was. And there's the very top of it is on our farm, and then the very bottom of it, where it loops back around like a crescent moon kind of deal.
Gotcha.
The very bottom of it is on our farm. In both of those natural areas, even though they are nothing like they originally were, that's where the ducks go. It's crazy. One of them is in a rice field. The southern tip of it is a rice field. The ducks still go to where that tip is. That is where they go. They don't go up this side of it, that side of it. They go to where that old draw was at the end of that break, and then they come to the upper one that's is a more soil unit now, but the previous owner put a levee through the middle of it. It's got a blind that sits in the middle of it, so it's not like it was way back when, but that's where the ducks go.
Yeah, they're still conditioned to go to that
something
little
about
spot.
it.
Yeah.
Something about it is a magnet for them, and so that's what's happened over time, especially in Arkansas. Is so much of this has gotten so far away from what it used to be, especially on the ag side. Now, a lot of timber, the remaining chunks of it that they're staying there. In fact, they're even improved for wildlife because now they've put levees in. They can manage the water, and it's never too high, never too low. All that. I'm talking about private ground. It's probably better for wildlife than it used to be because there's places for them to get up and out of the water where a long time ago, big, huge rains put water everywhere and they had no place to go.
Yeah.
Well, now that's all manageable for the most part. Even though there's some really good places and some really famous clubs that still have a hard time managing water. There's just no way to do it if we get a big rain, 10-inch rain kind of deal, or 16-inch rain like we had last spring.
Yeah, water's gonna find a way.
That's right. Sure. That's right. So, that wildlife is kind of bunched up because there's not just a lot of that natural way the land used to be left. And I think in Arkansas, we've paid the price for that a little bit duck wise.
Yeah, that's interesting that those ducks are still going to that place that used to be. I wonder. You talk about like animal imprinting on like routes and places. I wonder, you probably could never there's probably no way to actually discern that, but it does make me just sit around and wonder like how many successive generations of greenheads have been coming down from Canada and ending up in that spot.
Yeah.
Man, well, real quick, because we've already kind of talked for an hour, but I'd love to hear. So the book you wrote, The Grand Prairie, right? And so the Grand Prairie is, I mean, I learned a ton from this book. This was like my introduction to Brent. It came out, you said, in 2018, right? And it's kind of like a documentation of all the towns that make up the Grand Prairie here in Arkansas. And so like the most famous place for folks outside of Arkansas would be like Stuttgart would be there. Where I'm at in Brinkley is actually like it would be outside according to your book. It's outside the Grand Prairie, right? So probably just before you get to me, Hazen would kind of be like the northerly edge, right? And then where I'm at in Brinkley would be what they called back in the day, they called the Big Woods, right? But if you would real quick, it doesn't have to be real quick, but there's a couple of like bits of information from that book that I find myself repeating a lot, right? Like one of it being, and I might be misquoting, Paleolithic might be the wrong actual time frame word, but talking about finding these basically ancient trash piles from indigenous people that was like a large percentage of them were mallard bones, right? And it kind of speaks to the fact that mallards have always come to Arkansas because of the natural cycles and the flooding up of these woods and the access to this nutrient-rich food source like acorns. And then also, I think a lot of people don't think about the other seeds and the invertebrates and stuff that they're getting access to. But what kind of facilitated that book? Because it has really kind of, from what I've seen, it's kind of become like probably one of the 2 or 3 textbooks of modernity about Arkansas duck hunting.
Yeah, well, and that it is interesting that truly how long ducks have been coming here. Obviously the Mississippi River was probably the driving force, the kind of the highway that they followed, but there was so much of that hardwood bottomlands in East Arkansas once upon a time that there was pretty much endless amounts of habitat for them. And then once East Arkansas started shifting to ag and rice farming became such a deal, then the ducks had the best of everything that they wanted. And so it is just perpetuated their attractiveness to this, like you said earlier, the bottom end of this funnel, to where they've been coming for generations and generations to get everything they needed to winter. And we've somehow been able to sustain that over time, and hence their desire to still come here. Some other states have started to manufacture a habitat, and that gets into the whole short stopping of ducks and everything else. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with them doing things to keep ducks from coming here. I mean, it's not something you could ever prevent. You could never put the clamps on it. But it's crazy to think even how long people have been coming here to hunt ducks. I mean, the book talks a lot about how big businessmen would come from all over the country by rail to Stuttgart to meet an outfitter and to go out the next morning to shoot ducks. And of course, back then, for a pretty decent time window until the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, I think that was 1918. Prior to that, you could shoot as many as you wanted to. So you think about just 100 years ago.
Yeah, you want to talk about what pile picks used to look like.
Yeah, I mean, and those have been around forever. The book's full of them from numerous decades. So, I mean, pile picks are part of it. I get that. It's just that's all we're worried about nowadays, it seems. But that's what developed the culture, is because and they still do, people travel from all over the world to come hunt ducks, and mainly to come hunt ducks in the trees, because you just can't do it like we do it here. Yeah,
and it really is. It's hard. We don't need to go too far into this, but it's like trying to describe what it's like to kiss a girl for the first time. Like, you can't do it, and
that's right.
You know what I mean? It's just something kind of magical.
It is, and that uniqueness is the big attraction. There are some other places. There's some pockets of places that you can shoot ducks in the woods, but not like here. Mm-hmm. And that just created this mystique to the whole culture of Arkansas duck hunting. And so the people that grew up here, it's woven into the fabric from numerous demographics. But big part of business. I wrote an article a few years ago in Greenhead, the magazine, about how duck hunting is in Arkansas is equivalent of a corporate golf outing for a lot of people. We don't go meet up and have a few cocktails, lunch, then we tee off at 1:00. It's come to the clubhouse, the night before. We'll duck hunt. We'll have big breakfast the next morning, and a lot of business gets done. In Arkansas, a lot of business gets done that way.
Sure.
Versus at the country club. So that's how woven it is into our culture here as a state. I don't think anyone, even today, in it may be a substandard handful of duck seasons for us, it's still better than most 99% of the world gets to hunt mallard ducks. It's still better here than it is anywhere else.
I saw that I had some friends come in from Virginia and we hunted, and especially when you're inviting people to come, you feel this onus to really put them on a good hunt, right? And I was apologizing to him. I was like, man, this is kind of a little to me it's kind of a mediocre duck hunt. And he was like, man, I've never seen this many ducks in my entire life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's like,
we're
always
spoiled.
Ducks flying. Yeah.
I mean, call it spoiled. Our standards are really high, and maybe that comes with the duck capital of the world tag, but we still got it pretty good. And I'm not saying that these last handful of seasons have been great and not like it used to be or whatever, but it's still pretty good. And maybe we got to temper our standard just a little bit, and get away from, like we talked about earlier, this limits mentality.
Yeah, and maybe focus on some different parts of it and really finding value in kind of like the entirety of the experience, which is not to plug what I'm doing, but that's important to me. It's honestly, it's one of the biggest parts of me pushing whole bird usage so much, because especially like on a spec hunt or something when you can only kill 2 birds, if you can really make the most out of that bird as table fare, if you can get, instead of just getting poppers out of it or something, right? Mm-hmm. If you can get 2 to 4 like really good meals to share with people, that it elongates the entirety of the experience, because every time you're eating some of that bird, like you're usually going to be sharing that with someone you care about, and that's an opportunity for stories, right? And that's a big part of why people hunt. It's a big part of like kind of passing down this lineage and this heritage of it all. So yeah, maybe it's an opportunity to actually, drive around with the duck call in your truck and get proficient at it instead of some of what I've seen, it was really important to me to get good on a duck call.
Oh yeah. Right. For sure. That's part of the experience.
Yeah.
In fact, I had a really good friend that, very serious duck hunter, that said he did not really hunt the last 2 weeks of the season because the ducks had gotten kind of finicky, and so they weren't calling at him much, and that for him that's part of the experience. And so he started tapering off how much he went. If he can't call them, he didn't say anything about shooting them.
Yeah.
If I can't call them and have them respond and react to me, that's not as interesting.
Yeah,
from my experience.
It's part of the romance of it.
It is. It is.
And like I've said this before, and I've written it, like duck hunting, I think waterfowling, the way that I do it anyway, it's ultimately it's a romantic experience, right? Like this is not a cost of, as much as I push the culinary side of it, and as important as that is to me. I mean, we're eating speckled bellies tonight, me and my wife and my kids are, right? It's not a cost-effective way, either monetarily or exertion of effort, to feed oneself. It's a supplementary way to feed myself, but a cost-effective way is like trapping coons and trapping beavers and shooting white-tailed deer. There is a richness of experience. There is a community-based aspect to this that when you really get down to it is a big part of the attraction of it. So it might be time to focus on that a little bit more. And also I might leave us with this a little bit. I think oftentimes now there's a lot of false bravado and this strange link to some idea of masculinity with like killing ducks. And you see a lot of videos and it's like this amplified guitar music and
yes, yep.
a lot of pictures, like a lot of darkening of images to make people's faces seem like more grave and serious and whatever. This isn't a war, right? This
right.
This isn't. This is something that is supposed to ultimately be like a joyful, kind of romantic, community-based experience in large part. And so it's worth reminding ourselves of that, and trying to keep some of that at the forefront of our minds, I think does, help us remember to be good stewards, allows us to be flexible, and to do what's best for the resource and best for the animals, and hopefully best for the elongation of, people being able to do this, so that 50 years from now, maybe my daughters are talking about going speck hunting and duck hunting with their dad, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it's a as we all know, it's a very fragile resource, and just think we can kind of just churn and burn, and it's just going to be around. That's pretty short-sighted, and I think we got a little bit too much of that in the sport.
Yeah,
right now.
For sure. Well, hey, Brent, if folks want to get a hold of you and keep up with what you're doing, I know you got Greenhead Magazine, but why don't you tell folks how to?
Yeah, the book is available at arkansasgrandprairie.com. You can get it at Max as well. Most people probably listening to this podcast are familiar with Max Prairie Wings there in Stuttgart. They also carry it. And then, the Greenhead, the magazine, comes out every August, September-ish. And you could get a copy of that. It's free. I think that do charge a little bit for the shipping. Be picked up all around Arkansas at lots of places when it comes out, but you can get it at greenhead.net. And you can even get on an annual subscription and get that. You don't have to think about it. It just shows up every year when it comes out. But a lot of fun to do those projects and keep everybody up to speed with what's going on.
Awesome. Well, Brent, thanks so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Yep. Hey, folks, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Black Duck Revival podcast. As always, it's produced by me, Jonathan Wilkins, and Brian Sachs. Waterfowl dates are coming, I assure you. I'm still finishing up a few things, and like I said before, it's just taking a little bit longer to really hammer down the details so I can make sure that I'm offering the experiences that I want to for everybody, but those will definitely be coming out this spring, so stay tuned on that. Also, as I've mentioned in some of the previous podcasts, booking is open now for catfish excursions. That's when you and a guest or a friend join me for a few days of catfishing, bird watching, talking about, the flora and the fauna of these places that I love so much, specifically in the Arkansas Delta. We'll go after catfish by running limb lines, trout lines, yo-yos, kind of some more traditional southern methods that I'm a big fan of, and are usually a way to have a good meat haul and fill your freezer with some really fantastic wild caught protein. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, and like I said in a couple of podcasts earlier, I will soon be embarking on a pretty serious turkey tour this spring, and so the best way to keep up with that will be just by following me on Instagram, and that handle is just Black Duck Revival, or you can always go to the website, check out my blog, there's recipes, and check out dates for waterfowling stuff, and book your catfish excursion by going to blackduckrevival.com. If you want to take a look at hunts or fishing trips, just go to the Experiences tab, and all that pertinent information will be available to you. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Until then.